Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you again for joining me. By the way, if you haven't left me any feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube, please do so. Love to hear from you. Now, I can't get back to everybody because I get so many emails and texts and comments that I can't get back to everybody. So I do my best to try to go through those and answer those. Now, today, I want to talk about building your knowledge base as a salesperson, building your knowledge base, but I'm going to give you a strategy, one that I use. Now, I have a bookshelf. Shocking, I know. Now, I called it the golden bookshelf. That's what I call it, the golden bookshelf. Here's why. Too often I see people, talk on video, and behind them, they have this massive bookshelf. Massive. You can just tell it goes from wall to wall. Now, I don't have a massive bookshelf because I'm not into quantity. I'm into quality. And so what do at least once and maybe even twice a year is I purge books. In other words, I buy about, on average, maybe 2 or 3 books a month. Easily 2 or 3 books a month, depending on my rhythm and how much time I have. Now, when I go through the books, after I read them, I make a decision. Is this book worth keeping on my golden shelf, or do I donate it to Goodwill? Yes, I actually do that. So the books that are currently on my shelf are always the best of the best. That's what I keep, the best of the best. Books that I can go back to and refer and find the information I need almost instantly because I know my books. Now, having said that, when I talk to people, I said, how many books do you read? And believe it or not, the majority of people simply don't read. I don't know what the latest numbers are, but the last one I read was only 8% of the population actually reads a business type book, nonfiction. 8%. 8%. Which means 92 don't read, which means that mentally they're just moving furniture around. What do I mean by that? When you read a book, you gain new knowledge. Somebody actually sat down for hours, hundreds of hours, maybe 1,000 hours, just to write a book. And for the low price of, let's say, $20, you can gain that knowledge. And only 8% of the people take advantage of that. Now, when you read a new book, you gain new insight, get new ideas, so you can actually work with that and create something new. Now, the other 92% that don't read anything, they're just moving the mental furniture around in their head. By that I mean is that when you don't have any new ideas coming into your head, you're just mulling over old ideas. You're moving the furniture around. You're not introducing anything new. So I encourage you, if you don't read a book, you need to read a book. Make a goal, set a goal, 1 book a month. Come on, you can do it. Now, for those of you who might be hesitant, say, Victor, is that every time I buy a book, I don't finish it. Oh, I heard that one so many times. Victor, I bought a book, I didn't finish it, and that's why I just don't buy books. Now, listen carefully, because that is one of the dumbest things you could ever say to yourself. I want you to think about that the reason you don't buy books is because you didn't finish the last one. Now, here's what happens. Let me see if I can walk you through, because I'm going to give you over this mental hump. If you're that person that stopped reading because the last book you didn't finish, listen carefully. I'm going to get you over this mental hump. Now, when you bought the book, the question was, why did you buy the book? Why did you buy that specific book? And if I were to ask you, we're talking one-on-one, you say, well, Victor, I wanted something specific out of that book, which is great. That means you are reading with intent. I always recommend when you buy a book, you buy it with a thought in mind, like, why am I buying this book and what do I want to get out of this book? Let me say that again. Why am I buying this book is what you ask yourself, and what do I want to get out of this book once I finish reading it? Okay? Having the why and the what. Now, once you start reading the book, let's say you've qualified them through those 2 lenses, right? Why? Here's why I'm reading it. What do I want? Here's what I want. And when you start reading that book, I want you to use my famous 100-page rule. Now, the 100-page rule is very simple. You're going to read the first 100 pages, and at the end of those 100 pages, you are not satisfied. You are not satisfied with what you're getting out of the book. Then I want you to take that book and donate it to Goodwill. Put it in a box and then send it off to Goodwill when you're ready. Now, a lot of people have a hard time doing this. They feel guilty that they bought a book, but they didn't finish reading it. There's no need to feel guilty. Look, when you look at life is like a law of averages, right? You're going to try a bunch of things. A lot of things are not going to work, but when they do work, that's a good thing. So when you buy a book, not every book you buy is going to be a good book. There are going to be some disappointments in there. There's going to be a lot of disappointment in there. Trust me, I know this. And so when you get the book, don't feel guilty about after the first 100 pages just donating it to Goodwill. Okay, just chuck. In other words, I always say just chuck it. By chuck it, I mean put it in the bin and then donate it to Goodwill. Don't let that whole mental trap of, well, I bought a book and I didn't finish it, that's why I don't buy any more books. Bad thinking. As Zig Ziglar would say, that is stinking thinking. So rule number one, again, well, really two rules. Rule number one is when you buy a book, read it with intent. Why am I buying this book? What do I want to get out of it? Now, by the way, side note, when you read a book with intent, your brain locks in on the information you are seeking. So if you buy a book with a certain intent to get certain content out of it, your brain really focuses in on that. And believe it or not, you'll be able to extract a lot of great information. So rule number one is read with intent. Rule number two, the 100-page rule. If after 100 pages you're not, quote unquote, sold on that book, then chuck it. Put it in the bin, give it to Goodwill. Now, there will be times where you're unsure if the book is good or bad. You know, it's kind of a good book, but you're not feeling it anymore. Then I have a special place for those books because I have a couple of those books, not many, but a few of those that, you know, it's a good book, but I'm just not into it. It's good content, but it's not what I'm looking for right now. So I have a bin. It's really a drawer that I call Purgatory. Right? Purgatory is a place where you go until I decide what you do with you. So at the end of the year, what I'll do is I'll go back into my purgatory drawer and say, do I still want to keep these? And in 9 out of 10 cases, I pretty much don't. I chuck the books, put them to Goodwill. So again, rule number one, read with intent. Rule number two, the 100-page rules. Don't let it stop you from reading. By the way, this is just a side note, I catalog my books. I got 3 categories. I'll share my categories with you. One is sales books. These are sales processes, sales systems, sales studies, and you can almost say even some sales motivation, but not too much of those. Everything that has to do with understanding different sales processes, different sales books from different sales authors out there. I read what they write because sometimes they'll give me an idea or perspective that I didn't have. That's category number one. Category number two is influence and persuasion. So it's no surprise that this podcast is about sales influence. So my second category of books is persuasion and influence. So anything that has to do with the art of persuasion, anything that has to do with the art of influence, strategies, tactics, framing, all that good stuff, I put in that category. And I recently, because I released a new book called Sales Ex Machina on how AI, artificial intelligence, is changing the world of selling, I now have a third category, and that's my AI category. Everything that has to do with artificial intelligence, machine learning, that's my third category. So I have really just 3 categories. Again, I got a couple of books on motivation, but really, it's really all about sales, category 1, influence and persuasion, category number 2, and then AI, which is category number 3. So again, I'm just sharing that maybe you want to catalog or categorize your books. Now, number 3, first one, intent. 200-page rules. Number 3, this is the one I use to really extract the information I want. I have my own shorthand. And I'm going to give you the quick and short of it. When I'm going through a book, I write on my books. I mean, I really write in my books. And I have ways of tagging things in my books to be consistent. For example, if there is a data point, like a statistic or a number based on a study, I put a hashtag, like a pound sign. That tells me that there's a number. So in the column, I put a hashtag. Obviously, I underline key statements, so I do that. And then when somebody asks in the book, if the author asks a really great question or there's a really great quote, I put GQ in the column. GQ in the column. Now, when there's a great idea, like, wow, that's a great idea or a great statement, I put an exclamation point. I use an eyeball when I come across a piece of insight. A piece of insight is something that shifts my brain, information beyond the obvious, right? So I always draw an eyeball. And then if there's a study, some type of study that was done, I put an S with a circle around it. If I like a paragraph, I just put a P next to that paragraph. And if I like the whole page, I put a P at the top. That allows me to go back And here's what I'm going to recommend. Once you finish a book, what I want you to do is go back and rescan the book and just look for those underlines and all those marks that you made throughout the book. And it'll be interesting, if not amazing, on how much retention will happen. In other words, you'll capture an extra 5 or 10% more in terms of memory and retention just by simply rescanning that book. So that is it. That is how you create a golden bookshelf. Remember, it's not about quantity, it's all about quality, and it's all about intent. Why am I reading this? What do I want? Use the 100-page rule, mark it up the way you like it, review it at the end, and you will have one of the best bookshelves to help you move your career or your business forward. And that is it for this Sales Influence podcast. Don't forget to leave me some feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. As always, I appreciate it. And if you haven't checked out my Sales Velocity Academy, why haven't you? Just added a new course called Time Management for Salespeople, where I introduce some very interesting studies and tactics that you can use to be more efficient. So again, go to salesvelocityacademy.com if you're serious about increasing your sales velocity. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.